Welcome to the Failed Podcast. I am your host, Sam Esquivel. Thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed to our YouTube channel and everyone who listens to our audio experience on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as a few others, but those are the two most popular ones. And if you haven't subscribed, do us that favor, hit the subscribe button, help us grow our channel as we are trying to spread the art of storytelling and provide life lessons from those that we interview for you to, listen and maybe learn or share what we have, what we're creating here at the Failed Podcast. On today's interview, we sit down with Stephanie Alsup from Cocochèr. It's a chocolate company. She is the president. You can find this product at www.cocochèr.com. That is COCOCHER.com. Stephanie, also known as Chef Stephanie and creator of The Savory Artist and Cocochèr, began her journey in the culinary art after a successful career in the art world. She was a trained scenic and portrait artist. She transitioned to the culinary arts after she opened several galleries in the Dallas, art galleries in the Dallas area. Seeking to enhance her culinary skills, Stephanie attended the Culinary School of America and Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts. Known for her delectable dish and wine knowledge, she mastered the art of pairing flavors to enhance the dining experience. As a result of her health-conscious approach, stemming from her time as a fitness model, led Stephanie to research food for optimal health, ultimately aiding her recovery from cancer. This experience inspired her to assist others facing similar challenges, leading to her focus on therapeutic edibles such as chocolate truffles and desserts. Stephanie's artisan treats, crafted with love and expertise, offer not only therapeutic benefits but also delicious flavors, with options including keto-safe sweeteners and gluten-free varieties. Her creations cater to diverse dietary needs, reflecting her dedication to promoting wellness through culinary artistry. And it's a great conversation. I hope that you enjoy, so stay tuned. Also, I want to make a correction. I reference Anthony Bourdain's book and I give the wrong title. The proper title is Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. I may edit it out. I may leave it in. But either way, I just wanted to make that correction before the episode starts. And I hope that you enjoy it. And so here it goes. But let's go ahead and welcome Stephanie to the Failed Podcast. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Hi, Sam. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I am looking forward to this conversation. I feel like we have been having small conversations leading up to today. And I just know that you have a lot of wisdom and life experience. And I just felt like, man, we need to share it with the world. I need to sit down with Stephanie. And so I extended the invitation and you said, yes, I'm willing to do it. You weren't nervous? Have you done a podcast before? Have you done an interview before?
Never done a podcast before.
This is going to be great. I can't wait to see what you have for us. Obviously, you have inspired me in our conversations about business, life, and so many other things. I don't know where you get as far as like the wisdom and how you share it with me. It's always very helpful. So I know that it comes from a good place. And so that's why we are here today. So are you ready?
I think so.
So here we go. I like to start with people's early years. I think they help us and develop us. And it's not always pleasant. You know, we go through challenges in our homes and with our parents, but whenever we grow up, we look back and we say, I'm thankful for this, or I learned from this. And so what was your upbringing like, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from your parents, or a few things that maybe stuck out from when you were young that still help you out today?
Both of my parents had a great work ethic. The entrepreneurship you could see came from both my parents. I grew up as a small child in the city, and then we moved to the country.
Yeah.
When I was about 9 or 11, somewhere in there. So I gained the benefits of both city and country.
It's funny because it's usually the opposite. People go from a country life to a city life. Did you ever get a chance to talk to your parents why they transitioned the opposite way?
Probably just to escape.
Yeah, just to get out from the hustle and bustle. Mm-hmm. What do you remember from the country life, from living outside of an urban area that maybe helped you, or did you struggle? Was the adjustment difficult for you?
As a child, immediately the first thing a child thinks of is, oh no, where are my friends?
Yeah.
You're taking me out of my safety, security, my happy place with my friends and school. But living in the country, I gained all the knowledge and experiences that I never would have experienced living in the city.
Yeah.
We had horse, we had this beautiful garden and a gorgeous orchard, which of course came hand in hand with a lot of hard work. But those things like that, you don't get all the time living in the city.
I agree. So what challenges did you have, or struggles when you were young that have made you who you are today? Because I know whenever you're tending to the earth or animals, man, it's early. You got to wake up early, and kids, I don't want to wake up. I don't want to do this and do that. And it's very consistent. Like when you're out in the country, the things that are required on a daily basis. It does something else to an individual. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
You learn discipline quickly.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very sheltered home. My parents were strict parents, but in hindsight, that was extremely beneficial.
Answer this for me, because my dad, he was very strict. And through the process of me doing this podcast and doing it and emphasizing on storytelling, I feel like whenever I say my dad was strict, it doesn't do justice to how he was strict. So I've learned to say my dad was very punctual. If you weren't in trouble, you wouldn't see his bad side. But as soon as I was in trouble, he was very stern and direct. He didn't mince words. He was, as he was a matter of fact as they came. So my dad was strict, but he was strict as a father, not simply because of other things. How was your father strict? And looking back, how were those things like, man, I'm glad he was stern in that or this?
I mentioned the word discipline earlier. Discipline, the aspect of you have a time to wake up, you have certain duties or roles, or back then you called it household chores. You disobeyed. Everything was punctual on a timeline. The manners and respect to our elders.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. That was influenced and part of our household, part of our life, of respect of your elders, your home, your environment. And that stretched everything from the interior of the home to the outside when you're working in the garden or out walking through the trees, the orchard, the fruit-bearing trees that we had, taking care of the livestock, the dogs, the horses.
What's a beautiful memory you have of smelling the morning, right, in the country, or seeing a harvest, or what's a pleasant memory that maybe we just need to be reminded today as we listen to this podcast? Because everyone's memory is like, I need to run, and then there's traffic, and then there's red lights and stop signs and all these things that kind of trigger this like negative vibe. Give me a positive vibe, a positive memory you have.
I have a few. Of course, moving out to the country, you think as a child, oh my gosh, my life is ended as I know it. But I did not realize that my friends, my old schoolmates, were a little bit envious because it was a totally different life. You would wake up, say in the summer, and the sun rising, being outside, taking care of the animals and the land, watching the sunrise is so beautiful and peaceful. The birds, everything is in total bloom.
Yeah.
The environment is so alive within itself that you get to experience that.
There's a phrase right now, and it says, touch some earth. And people are starting to trend, and people are understanding the power of like taking your shoes off and your socks and just walking on some grass, walking on some dirt. We don't realize how much we don't do that. We don't connect with the earth, but how healthy it is. And so I felt like you got a lot of that. And that's so great. I'm kind of jealous. I lived in the city growing up, but if you're listening, touch some earth. I think it's good for all of us. Living out in the country, there is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a limited scope of like what industries or what professions lie ahead. I don't know what the conversations are like in the classroom in a setting like that. But I would think that a young kid would be thinking, well, I'm going to be a farmer, or I'm going to raise cow, or I'm going to, I don't even know the industries out there, but I imagine that they're very narrow for somebody young. And so when did you start thinking about your future and what you were going to do? Or were you just on autopilot and say, I'm going to just raise cows or something? How did that look? Because your career path is very interesting, and I want to draw a picture of how you got there.
Actually, when I was about 4, my mother owned beauty salons, but when I was little, I was heavily influenced by a lady that she worked with, her daughter. She ended up being a federal judge, and the neighborhood I lived in as a small child, everyone within the neighborhood seemed to be connected to law enforcement in some way, either a judge or the police officers or chief of police of certain police departments, highway patrol. And I just thought all fathers were either in karate, bodybuilders, the true masculine man's man, or they were in law enforcement, which was also a masculine position at that time, and still is, with all due respect. But I actually wanted to go into law as a small child just because of that influence. Mm-hmm. And as I started growing up a little bit more and drawing, that's when I found my love of art, painting, drawing, being outside, drawing the horses, painting the horses, all of the landscapes. And then being Dimitri Veil's protege at the age of 9.
Who's Dimitri Veils?
Is an artist, prominent artist here in Highland Park.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate and blessed to attend art classes from him and another portrait artist, but that's where it all began. And
so once you graduated high school, what did you do after that? When did the painting come in? Did you pursue law, or what was next?
So at the age of 13, I sold my first true portrait. And from that, it bloomed. It just grew from there and to being commissioned. So when I graduated from high school, my concentration was in art.
Oh, okay.
And always being outside. And I had a love for dabbling around with food. When I was growing up, my mother she's a phenomenal baker. So I would come home and there would be the aroma of fresh bread and cookies. And so that influence played a large part later on in my life in becoming a chef. So in my 20s, working, painting, creating gorgeous works of arts for people that would commission me. By the age of 25, I owned my first art gallery.
Wow.
And it just began from there. And it just grew from being commissioned for paintings and murals and frescoes, and then studying art locally, studying art abroad, historical restoration of art.
Oh, really?
It was amazing. That the art world is ever evolving.
Yes.
And always growing, such as the food world is too. But if you look at it, you have a canvas that you paint on, and in food, a culinary world, your canvas is your plate.
I agree. Now, you sold your first painting at 13. So many people right now, and it's like this creative boom that's going on because of all the platforms to share it. So everybody wants to be an artist, be an influencer, be a videographer, all of these creative things. But a lot of people don't get solidified early. And so there's a lot of doing it, but there's never anyone saying, I value what you're doing. Being that you sold something at 13 when you were just starting, I mean, that solidified that you were good because someone bought it from you. Do you remember that feeling? Because for me, it's so valuable for someone to say, yeah, Sam, you're good at it. Let's make a deal. It has value and we exchange money, whatever. It helps you continue to go. Did you realize, I guess, what a blessing that was to receive that at an early age mentally? Because that's so necessary for creativity and for it to keep going.
The validation is the word I think that I would accentuate here. It validated my work, my tenacity in wanting to improve myself and my skill and my craft. I didn't realize at that time that I would actually become an artist as an adult. It's what I aspired to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize the part that would play in such an influence it would play as an adult.
Yeah.
In retrospect, looking back, I think selling that first portrait was intimidating and exciting.
Yeah.
And it gave me that nervous inside feeling of, oh my gosh, this is a make it or break it moment. What do I do with this? And the only thing I knew was just to embrace it, go forward, and do the best I could possibly do, and pray that it was a good piece of art.
You know, and we're going to get into some of your career stuff later in the conversation, but just closing a deal or your first deal, it's so difficult for people that sometimes that's what keeps people from moving and doing and continuing. They don't know how to make the first deal. Did you learn that from your mom? And you said you had other influences as far as like entrepreneur and business owners. Did someone talk you through that, or was it just spontaneous? Were you just sitting there and someone said, I like your painting, and then you're like, oh, well, give me this, and then they said, okay, and it was done? Or were you more thoughtful in that first, when you first sold your first painting?
At the age of 13, I was so insecure and not fully assured of myself and what I was doing that it was guided for me by a mentor and the gentleman that actually hired me to paint the portrait.
Oh, yeah.
And from him, I learned a lot. He ended up being a great influence in my life and as being an entrepreneur. And watching him and trying my very best to walk in his footsteps, so to speak, I would say that he taught me a lot. I think it's so important for young people, children, young adults, to learn from a good mentor, someone that is seasoned in business and they've been through all the ups and downs. And of course, in business, you experience everything. You experience failure and successes. But it's the combination of both that help us to be successes. Because think of it this way, Sam, if we don't have failures in our lives, how are we going to learn?
It's the greatest giver of lessons, is failure. 25, you launch, an art gallery. What were you thinking?
That's what I thought.
And I asked that because no one ever really puts it that way, because starting any business, whether it be a gallery or any other kind of service or anything, it is difficult. If people knew what it would take, most people wouldn't do it because it's challenging. And I don't think the challenges ever stop when you're in business. And so what motivated you to do it? And when did you realize, like, man, I'm glad I did it?
The commissions began coming through the door, and I realized this is going to be my life. This is truly what I want to do. This is my passion. This is my drive. This must be the God-given talent that God blessed me with, and I have to do something with it, or I would lose it. That's literally how I saw it. And having an art studio in the house secluded me, and I knew that I love people. I love talking with people, learning from people, and being in that environment might open more doors. And it also provided me with a platform to show my work as well as other artists' work. So I began slow and small, and then grew from there. And from one gallery opened another, and then another. And then I just began traveling. I became just a commissioned artist and traveled all over the world painting.
What were some of the lessons that you learned from running a business? Was that your first business that you started, was the galleries?
Yes.
Well, there's so many people that want entrepreneurship. That word right now is so popularized. But I think that they leave out all the details and difficulties. So what were some of the things that maybe when you started, you were disillusioned at first, but then you got a hang of it and you're like, man, people, if I was able to share this to a younger person, I would tell them this whenever you're stepping into starting a business?
At first, it's the fantasy world. It's, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. It's a place of my own. I get to set the rules. I get to go in and do whatever it is I want. No one fully expresses and explains the responsibilities that come along with that. And the responsibilities are long. You have your accounting, you have your employees, you have not only your inventory, but then you have the maintenance of your actual structure or facility, if you will. And the accountability with yourself and your employees. I didn't just think of them as people that worked for me. I respected them as people that work with me, because I've always tried my very best to practice I hate to say it's a rule, but the mindset of we're a team. If I don't do my job, the next person to me can't do theirs, and vice versa. So we're congruent and working together. No one explained that to me when I first started out. I just think it's like, oh, I'm going to run a business and I'm the boss and that's it. There's so much emotion attached to running a business that you don't realize it until you're in it, and you have to choose. Am I going to be a person for the people, or am I going to be a person just for profit? And I think that does separate a great business from a good business when you start thinking of the people. My dad worked for a company all his life. One company, and the owner, that's what they believed. They were really family oriented. They wanted to get the families ahead, and they wanted the kids to be educated and stuff. That's how they saw what they were doing, aside from the actual service that they were doing. And so they're thriving till today. And so I really like that you shared that. I think people need to hear that, where you don't just think about business for me, but you think about business for me and the people and my team. And I think that changes the approach when people do things. And so there was a part in your life, I was reading your bio, you got sick. You had cancer. We don't have to get into the details, but
When did that happen? When your galleries you had 2 or 3 galleries, you were traveling, whereabouts did this happen? Because this is definitely a challenge that a lot of people go through.
The first time I was diagnosed with cancer, I was 27.
Wow.
And at 27 years of age, and fitness model and an artist and traveling all over and living the life of Riley, basically.
Yeah.
That was like walking into a brick wall. It was a total shock. And it changed everything in my life, as a matter of fact. Yeah. And it also changed my outlook in life, because I realized then how short life can be and how precious it is, and make every day count.
Now, okay, let me ask this. So make every day count. You were obviously doing that. Mm-hmm. Like you were running a business and you were sought after, and it was very rewarding what you were doing, because you were expressing yourself and people loved what you were doing. But now you get sick, and like you said, you hit this brick wall. What's the difference between those two things? Because one is to slow down and breathe, and then the other one is like hurry up and just take the opportunity, take what's coming, catch a breath whenever I can. So when did you start making that adjustment? Because I imagine it slowed you down mentally, let alone physically. Can you kind of talk to me about that?
Sure. It did slow me down mentally. For about the first 30 days, the only thing I could think of was, what is the end result?
Yeah.
Because usually, well, and especially then, when you hear cancer at the age of 27, you think, oh my gosh, my life is over. My life as I know it is over.
Yeah.
It would be better said. But it wasn't. After going into about the second month after being diagnosed and learning more and diving down and researching, and realized this is another stepping stone.
Yeah.
Let's embrace this. Let's take care of it. Let's wrap it up, get it out of the way, and move on. That's when my self-survival skills started coming in. Mm-hmm. Now, remember we talked a moment ago about growing up in the country?
Yes.
You learn somehow this set of survival skills because you're in the country, you're on your own, you're either by yourself or in a small network, and you learn these interpersonal skills that you learn to depend upon. And of course, down on my hands and knees and praying, dear God, I don't know what your plan is for me, but I'm here, and if I'm supposed to survive this, walk me through it.
Yeah.
And wake me up after surgery and give me the epiphany of let's go. And I did. He did.
Yeah. So we all receive all types of news, and it's so easy to receive good news. We know how to respond with excitement, enthusiasm, and then we put action behind it. But that seems easy. But there's so many people who are receiving a diagnosis, and a doctor walks in and says, you have cancer. And that is just something unique in how you receive it. Do you remember how you received it and what you felt, right? And then how long did it take for you to be clear on what you received and then start figuring out what the plan moving forward was? Because I feel like it just causes like this tunnel vision to happen all of a sudden, and it's almost like a shock thing, and you're not even seeing as wide as you should. So when did that happen? And when did you begin to get clarity, and what advice would you give to someone that's maybe just received it, or maybe in the future one of us may receive it?
So that's a correct description. Very visual description is you have tunnel vision, and everything in your world as you currently know it just funnels down into a very small pivotal point to where all you're looking at is that cancer. It's difficult to get out of that, to step back and not look at it that way. The turning point for me was right after surgery. And that was eye to eye with the surgeon and him saying, we cut down to healthy tissue. We're good. We feel good about what we've done. Now the next step is all you. When you hear those words, one, it's a sense of relief.
Yeah.
You realize all your prayers are answered. Okay, God, now what do I do in conjunction with you? Because now it's up to me. And that's when I began researching and studying nutrition. And yet again, that goes back to growing up with this huge garden and having the orchard and fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. You have all your proteins for growing up on the farm.
Yeah.
And what you don't grow and harvest and farm there, you're going into your network, so to speak. And mapping out my life at that point, knowing that I wanted to teach people. Just because you're diagnosed with cancer does not mean it's an immediate death sentence. It means that you can research it, fight it, isolate it, and move forward.
There's options.
There are options. And now, you look at the medical industry now, we have so many different options and treatments and now than we did back then.
So, from someone looking at from the outside in, you never know how to behave in certain circumstances. You don't know what to say and you don't know what to do. So what's something that maybe a loved one or a friend around you that they did that you said, that was very thoughtful. It's what I needed during this time?
If we fast forward to February of 2020, when I was diagnosed with colon cancer, a very good friend of mine, adorable lady, Melissa, she came to visit me for about a week, and she said, watching you after you came out of surgery, and she came to stay with me, and she said, you don't ask for help. I came here prepared to take care of you, everything for you. She said, the fact that you don't ask for help and you get up every day and you put one foot in front of the other and you are self-sufficient, she said, it's amazing to me the mindset, if you think positive and you put the action in being positive, how quickly you do recover, how quickly you do resume your normal life.
So you had a hard time asking for help.
I did.
Because you're just tough. You're a go-getter. And I respect that. We should all have that gear. But it makes me think of something because you have such a kind heart. Like I came to visit with you a few years ago and shared with you a struggle that I was going through, and you were very helpful. Like, in essence, I came in and said, I didn't say help me with advice and you share your life experiences with me, but that's what I was doing. You know what I mean? I had to get myself to that vulnerable spot where I was just like, I need to seek advice, and I didn't know what it was. We didn't know each other well back then, but you were so open to helping me.
I love to help people.
And so at that moment, you didn't want help. So to me, it seems like it's a bit of it's this weird contrast. Can you think of a time where you said, I don't ask for help, but I'm glad I did? Because I feel it's important. I'm proud of you for not asking when your friend Melissa came in, right? And that you had a speedy recovery. But do you ever think about, like, I need to ask for help? What gets you there? Because that's a hard thing for people.
Yes.
But sometimes it's necessary. And the advice and time that you've given me with the things that we've talked about, I'm very thankful. But I had to allow myself to say, can you help me?
It's a point of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And transparency with yourself when you realize you don't have the answer and or you don't have the tools to solve the problem or take the next step. It's also being honest with yourself, knowing that you do have that vulnerability and you need help, and knowing that it's okay to ask for help. Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't hear that growing up. So I carried that with me as an adult, and knowing that now, I love helping people. I enjoy it. There's something that I know that I've experienced that it can help in any way. Mm-hmm. I will always offer. But if someone isn't open to receiving, then I step back and wish them well and try my best to at least express to them at some point in time, if you're open to any conversations or having a good mentor in your life, seek the person of which you're most comfortable with, that you think you can learn from.
Yeah.
It's that transparency.
So you started studying and digging into, is that when you stepped into food? After that, when did the food thing start happening? Because I want to get into that part of your life.
When I opened my first gallery and I was hiring caterers, and I don't mean this to be negative against caterers because I've done my fair share of them, obviously, throughout all the years, I just realized how creative I am with food, and my presentations were, I hate to say better, because it...
Well, you had an artistic touch.
Yes,
and so maybe that's what made it a bit different.
Yes, and so I began catering my own art openings and shows and exhibits. And then my clients began asking me if I would cater for their dinner parties and birthday parties and weddings. I did a lot of receptions and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and just everything. If it was an event and I was asked to cater, then I did it. I never said no. In every single job, I learned something new. And it opened other doors. And that continued. And keep in mind, I was studying nutrition at the time, and heart-healthy cuisine, and haute healthy, meaning it could be beautiful and healthy and enjoyable and didn't have to be bland. Then some of my clients began asking me to do personal chefing for them and private chefing, and that opened another door. It seems, Sam, that as my life has continued and my careers have continued, each vignette has opened a door into the other. And every aspect of my life, everything I've done has been from a creative standpoint.
The food industry, since Diaries of a Kitchen by Anthony Bourdain, it seems like that was the introduction and what he did into the way that we take in the culinary arts now, from foods from all around the world. Like we see it so much, and I think it helps because it's promoting business and all that. But there's one aspect that really bothers me, and so here we go. And so you don't have the smells. And so you can watch a million videos, but there is no smell. And I think that is like such a crucial part whenever it comes to food. And so can you talk to me a little bit about where your understanding and passion is about not only making the food, smelling the food, but then eating the food? Because there's a process to everything. And it's almost like those, when you talk food and culinary arts, it almost relates to business. It almost relates to art. It relates to so many things, because there's three important phases in a good dish. Which one of those stands out? Which one of those are you like, oh man, I have a great memory about a taste, a smell, or a preparation?
So we eat first with our eyes. I'm sure you've heard that phrase.
Oh yeah.
So you walk in, you see this beautiful arrangement of food. Let's just say it's a beautiful platter of food. Immediately, it's the vision. Then you begin salivating. That is when it's about the flavor. Then it's about the texture. Food is about layers. It's beauty, it's texture, it's the wonderful aromas, and then it's the satiation of the palate.
Yeah.
You asked,
what's a favorite memory you have of a process, a smell, or of a taste?
Couple. One I mentioned earlier, as a little girl walking through the door after school, and my mother would be baking homemade bread.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the aroma would just engulf the room, and it's almost as, remember the little cartoon Pepe Le Pew and the aroma swirling through the air? That's how that is, only it's just amazing aroma. that's one. And probably the other is when I'm working with fresh fruits and making sauces, it's the citrus and the sweetness of the fruit that I can smell and I can taste, even though I'm simply stirring and or sautéing something.
What's a favorite dish? Being a chef and preparing so much food for so many people, you think of everyone that said, "Man, this was good. Man, this was good." But even with art, like you have to have like a favorite artist or painting, and it almost seems difficult to narrow something down to what is my favorite. But do you have a favorite dish or favorite taste or something that you're just like, this is amazing?
You know, that's a common question that people ask me. You know, as a chef, what is your favorite dish to cook?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? And I've thought about that throughout the years. And my first answer would be anything seafood. I love seafood. That's gone back all the way back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Love seafood. Do I have a favorite dish that I've made? I used to make this, and I haven't made it in a while, but these gorgeous, how would I describe it? I would take lobster and shrimp and crab and make these beautiful pockets, soft, thin pastry pockets, and make a raspberry champagne glaze over it. The seafood, obviously, is my passion, but with the raspberry coulis and the champagne reduction with that, just coats it, tops it off, and then you have the citrus zest on top.
Yeah.
It's the added punch, the pop. It layers the flavors, it layers the textures. It's beautiful and bright in color.
I love the answer. It makes me a bit hungry, but I love the answer. And I think it's a lesson for anyone listening that, you know, so we ask, what is my passion? Okay, so everyone's seeking for passion, but then you have to realize, is it my passion? And I believe, and give me your thoughts on this, when something is your passion, you can describe it the way you describe that meal.
Absolutely.
Right? And so a lot of people can't do that because they haven't given thought to it. And so when you describe that, it's almost like a blueprint of, if you're passionate, then talk passionate about it. Because when you were sharing, I was like, oh man, that sounds so good. But I talk about like podcasting and storytelling in the same way, because to me, that's my dish of choice. And that it brings so many good memories from it. You know what I mean? And so when you share that, I think that's the takeaway for me. And so thank you for sharing it the way that you did. I think it's important for people to have heard it that way. We're going to jump into a few things about business, a little closer to what you're doing right now. Can you maybe share an example of your journey? Obviously from gallery, and then you got cancer, then you started studying nutrition and serving food, doing personal chefing, and then that leads into what you're doing now. How would you describe what you're doing now, and how does this part of your life, how's it a culmination of everything else to now?
I'd say it's a perfect culmination. If we funnel it down into what I'm doing now, is I've created a line of chocolate truffles, white chocolate and dark chocolate, that some are infused with CBD for the health benefits of that, and then without the CBD. How I develop my recipes is my journey through cancer and surviving that and all of the surgeries and the chemo and losing down to 99 pounds. I'm 5'10", and
Wow.
I had lost so much weight that I was just skin and bones, and I was given an ultimatum by my oncologist: eat, try to get some weight on, try to keep the weight on, or we're going to put a feeding tube in you. And that was not an option. So in my mind, I had to create a way that I could eat food again, try to keep it down, because going through that, you're just extremely ill. And my heart goes out to every single person that goes through that. So taking that, I thought, surely with all of my culinary experience, I can create something that is delectable, enjoyable, that everyone enjoys, and take the benefits of, now at one point, you have the benefits of THC, and that also enhances someone's ability to eat and to keep food down, to relax their interior muscle dexterity, if you will, and or their stomach, and they're able to keep the food down. And the CBD, it has all the gorgeous benefits of that without the hallucinogen of the THC.
Mm-hmm.
So also doing all the research that I have thus far with the CBD and all the benefits of it, full spectrum and or isolates, everything in between. That's how I came up with my fun recipes. I have 4 flavors that are enrobed in white chocolate, 4 that are enrobed in dark chocolate. The white chocolate, I have a limoncello, which is one of my favorites. Then I have an orange flavor that tastes like, do you remember the ice cream that push-up pops? The orange dreamsicles?
It tastes like that. That's too easy. That's too easy to eat.
So I have that flavor. I have one called Very Berry, and it's a mixture of raspberry, blueberry, and strawberry, and it's so luscious in flavor. It's like taking a mouthful of berries all at the same time. Then I have the red velvet, and who doesn't love red velvet cake? And so that tastes just like the red velvet cake. And then the dark chocolate, I have a bananas Foster, which is patterned after the cocktail. I have a pumpkin spice, which tastes like fall in your mouth, and it just explodes like a pumpkin pie. And the caramel crunch tastes just like the Payday candy bar. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it tastes just like a Payday candy bar and has the peanuts in it. And then the 4th is the dark chocolate ganache. And it's rich and it's luscious. And each truffle consists of 25 milligrams of the CBD. And usually that's a good dosage for a person to start with. And if a person has more inflammation and or sleep disorders, whatever the person's metabolism is, dictates how much CBD that they need and or can metabolize for their needs.
Could you have predicted that you were going to be making chocolates?
No.
With health benefits to it? I mean, so some math equations don't add up.
Right. Here I began as a savory artist, and I end up being a chocolatier. Who would have ever thought? That
is so crazy, but you never know where you're going to end up. And along the journey, take all the lessons from whatever you're doing at that moment, and somehow they just add up and set you up for where you're at now. What are some of the great lessons from the past that you're like, man, I'm glad I went through those because I'm able to do this? Because this is, let's just say, your 3rd career.
Yeah.
Right? Or is it 3 or 4?
3 or 4.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, to think it's hard to reset. And you've reset it, but it was a progression. You were growing, you were learning and seizing the opportunity. But what lessons paid off and set you up for right now?
I would say learning about fresh fruits and vegetables as a small child, moving forward to watching my mother as an entrepreneur and her business acumen and her work tenacity and work ethic. Then if I take that and add in owning the different art galleries and expanding my working relationship with everyone that's worked. Remember I said work with me? Yep. Because we're a team, carrying that team mindset and rule of thumb basically into this current business. And it is pulling in everyone that's worked for me, with me in the past, that wants to move forward into this next journey. And I have new people in my life that are working with me in this journey and developing Cocochèr and taking it live, which, you think about it, Sam, your entire life we're either learning or teaching, but we're doing both. And at the age of 59, I can't believe I just said my age out loud,
I didn't ask, so everyone knows.
Here we are. True confessions. Two confessions of what? A working woman. At the age of 59, I've realized if I could speak to my younger self, I would tell my younger self, embrace every moment of every day, keep a daily journal of what you've learned and maybe what you've shared and or taught. It doesn't matter if it's a classmate or if it's a member of your family or if it's even talking to yourself in the mirror. Moving forward, keep those great learning lessons. Keep in mind, failures and successes help grow us as people and move us forward into business. But get that mentor, have that mentor. Search out for different mentors at different stages in your life. And then as you open the doors, if you are to be an entrepreneur, open the doors to that business and invite those mentors in. Keep them on your journey through life because we don't just learn one thing from a person. We learn many things.
Yeah. How do you celebrate achievements?
That's a good question.
I ask that because people have a hard time sharing achievements. Maybe because, I don't know, maybe there's not enough of them. Maybe they're too busy. Maybe they don't know how to put a pause. And I think it's important for us to say and look in the mirror and say, good job, Sam. You did something good. You achieved this goal or that goal. What's something maybe that you achieved and what did you do to celebrate yourself?
You know, Sam, I'm so driven and usually live my life very fast-paced driven that I think there were only 2 times that I have given myself the time, the opportunity to stop and celebrate an achievement. One is when I graduated from culinary school, Le Cordon Bleu, and went on a cruise. And that was the opportunity to relax and go. I'd never been on a cruise before. And I thought, well, that's something that I could do. That's a new adventure. The second is going to Europe. And I didn't realize that that's how I was celebrating my successes. I love Europe. I love history. I love architecture. I love meeting new people, learning new cultures, new languages. That, looking back, is how I celebrated my successes because anytime I took a break, anytime I left, quote, home, I went to Europe. And that was encompassed with a celebration that I had achieved, a landmark in my life. And 2, it was time to relax and invest more time into my personal education.
What is one piece of wisdom or advice that you've learned throughout your life experiences, and I know we've covered a lot of them, that you believe is important to share with others?
Oh, life is precious. Every day is precious. Learn from your elders. As young people, we sometimes think that our elders are too harsh or judgmental or negative. They're not. They've lived life. They've had failures. They've had successes. They've been through an entire life story that we have not. And we can always learn from our elders and be appreciative for every day that you're able to spend with them. The other is just because one door does not open does not mean that the next door doesn't open. There may be a reason for God not opening that door. Your destiny may be a different journey.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
How has failure contributed to your personal growth and development, and what lessons have you learned from your experiences with setbacks or challenges?
Patience. Patience, kindness, understanding, and self-reflection. Failure could be trying to launch one product and getting so ahead of my skis, so to speak, that I didn't know everything at that time to do. And having to hit the restart button. But hitting the restart button is almost refreshing if you think about it. Because what you didn't know the first time around, you come in knowing the second time around. And then what you didn't know the second time around, you know the third time.
That's right.
So here we are. And also embrace the ability and the understanding to say, I don't know. What I don't know is what I don't know. But I can learn. Yeah. And find the people that you can learn from.
Well, thank you for coming on the Failed podcast. I believe we had a great conversation that I think a lot of people are going to learn from. Before I close this off, is there anything you would like to say or ask or anything? And I always like to give my guest a moment, and then if not, then I'll close it up.
Sam, you're such a great person. Your interpersonal skills are amazing. I'm impressed with you every single time we speak. It's such an even, flowing, easy conversation with you all the time. And I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your friendship very much. And thank you for allowing me to come on today with you.
Well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for coming on the Failed podcast. You have been listening to a great conversation from Stephanie Alsup. She's the president of Cocochèr, and you can find it at cocochèr.com at COCOCHER.com. Great things are coming, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for everyone that's listening. I hope that you learned something from today's conversation, and we'll see y'all on the next one.